there's so many good ones, and they kind of build upon themselves. So last week we kind of looked at the first two chapters, is that combined story of Hannah as she is going to Shiloh. You have Eli, who, by the way, Eli is by some accounts considered maybe to be one of the judges over Israel. Now, he's not on the main list of judges when we have all those, but the way he was kind of in charge or kind of overseeing, he had a very similar role. If he's not deserving of the list of one of the judges, he, as well as his sons, kind of fall into that category of they almost fit into basically what the judges would have done. That he's high ranking, he is kind of the leader over that area, but didn't keep things in check, as we saw last time, and his sons were doing some horrific things at Shiloh. Hannah, meanwhile, desperate for her child, praise to God, despite Peninnah, which was the rival other wife who was just making her life miserable, she still focused in on having a child that she was willing to give up at the same time, just so that she could have that gift to give to her husband. Again, we talked about that last time in that culture. That was such an important part of identity. Whether or not that was a good thing or not is, certainly arguable or debatable, but the fact remains that's what it was. And so she looked down on herself for her lack of ability to do that for her family. And so when God granted her the ability to have that son, that was, again, a gift that she turned around and gives to God, which is interesting because Samuel then goes to live with Eli, who doesn't have the best track record of keeping good raising of children. So it's, after all of that, and you see what his sons turned out to be, not necessarily the father figure you'd want to go have your child live with. And that's kind of where we come up to in chapter 3 as we start off here. So the boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. We think about this, it seems like, to a lot of, reading of it, that God was just always talking to his people during the Old Testament. But there were long periods of time that he wasn't, that he was letting things happen. There were times that he intervened, but there were also a lot of times that he didn't directly, vocally intervene and give them visions, speak directly to them. So this was a period of time where this was somewhat rare, that there weren't many prophets that were given specific information. Things were, for the lack of a better term, just kind of coasting along in their attempt to follow God. So when we look at that, the word of the Lord was rare. And this isn't the word of the Lord in the written form, because first of all, we weren't even to that yet, but we're talking more literally the word of the Lord. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Essentially, we're going to get a little bit into their ages here in a little bit. I'll